If you're dealing with the loss of a loved one in a wrongful death accident, many people think they have plenty of time to decide what they do. But the fact of the matter is, the longer you wait, it could hurt your case.
Hi, I'm John McLaughlin.
And I'm Tony Patterson.
We're attorneys at Parr Injury. Parr Injury has been around for more than 100 years, representing injury victims in central Indiana, the state of Indiana, and throughout the Midwest, obtaining recoveries for our clients in the 7- and 8-figure level. Tony, I want to talk to you a little bit about, say, for example, there's been a commercial truck wreck crash, and we know that there's been a fatality, that someone's lost a loved one, and those family members are getting the worst news of their life. They've not even thought about the legal ramifications or hiring a lawyer, but there's a whole chain of motion on the other side with the insurance carrier, the trucking company that's going on. What are some things that a family that has lost a loved one under that set of circumstances kind of needs to know as far as their rights?
Well, one of the things that is important, like you said, John, many times we'll be involved in a case and we find out that actually the insurance company or the trucking company had their representatives on the scene talking to their driver before the police officers even got there. So one of the things that's important to remember is that evidence can disappear, evidence can change. And one of the things, the unfortunate fact of when you have a wrongful death case is, in most cases, when somebody lives, they're able to tell their story. They're able to testify, say what happened, say, no, I had the green light, it wasn't red. They can provide that testimony. Unfortunately, when someone's been killed in an accident, they're not there to tell their story, and sometimes the truth gets muddled and lost. So it's important to make sure that if you have someone that's been killed in an accident, you make sure all the evidence is preserved. You make sure that the black boxes in the cars are downloaded and preserved. You make sure that the witnesses don't disappear. We've certainly had situations, John, where there's been eyewitnesses that were not documented on the police report. And then later, a few months later, you get hired on the case, you can't find those people. So it's important to know that you document those things, document the physical evidence, and also locate any witnesses that might be there.
That's right. So let's talk about those two examples. So sometimes the wreck's occurred, somebody's passed away, there's a fatality, and the family member, somebody reaches out and they are able to hire an attorney to protect their rights. At that point, what is Parr Injury? What is Parr Ritchie? What is John and Tony doing to preserve the evidence, make sure that the claim is going to be taken care of and that evidence isn't going to disappear or there's going to be questions about it later on?
Well, one of the first things you can do is write what's known as a preservation letter, right? Where you send a letter to the insurance company, to the other driver, to the trucking company, or whoever it may be, and just say, hey, you've got to make sure you preserve this evidence, whether it's their telephone, whether it's their vehicle, or whatever it may be. Many people don't know, but most vehicles have what's called a black box or an EDR, and it's in that car, and it will tell you how fast that truck was driving or car was driving at the time of the accident. It'll tell you where they applied their brakes. It'll tell you where they had the cruise control set. It'll tell you where they took any evasive action in steering. And sometimes you can see that somebody is speeding and had their cruise control set on speed. So it's important to know that you document these things before they disappear, because many times we have people tell us they're driving one speed, we get the black box and we learn no, in fact, they weren't. They're driving a different speed. So that's one of the things, is to send a preservation letter. And if they don't honor that, that evidence can be used against them later. The second thing is you want to make sure that any physical evidence is preserved as well. The vehicles are inspected, the scene is inspected. So many times we'll hire an accident reconstructionist to go out there and preserve that, photograph things to make sure that important evidence isn't lost.
Right. You know, another thing in the day and age where everybody has a camera phone and everything's being recorded, oftentimes these wrecks are on social media, they're on county web pages that follow law enforcement, and the law firm has the ability to look and monitor and save some of the things that could be crucial for evidence purposes later on, whether it's video that a witness took, those sorts of things. But going back to talking about accident reconstructionists, it's difficult for a family who doesn't day in, day out work with these individuals, work with these experts who are qualified to go out, collect the evidence, do the downloads, those sorts of things. That's where the law firm steps in. And we have experts, accident reconstructionists, truck safety experts that do this day in, day out that we work with. They also have the ability to work with local law enforcement who are also overseeing the investigation. So there's multiple conduits and ways that our law firm can get involved, reach out to our reconstructionists, engage them, engage law enforcement to make sure everything that's going to tell the story of what actually happened is preserved so everybody has a fair and just opportunity to look at it and do their rightful inspection to figure out what caused this wreck.
And that's a really important thing, John, when you talk about that. Most families and most people, whether they've been injured badly or they've lost a loved one, the cost of those experts, it's expensive. And as you noted at the beginning of our video here, the insurance company is going to send people out right away. They're doing that. The trucking companies, the insurance companies, they're preserving that information. But regular people don't have that available to them typically. The one thing is when you hire a personal injury lawyer or a law firm to help you on your serious injury case or your wrongful death case, typically they're going to handle that on a commission or contingency basis. And that's how we do it. We don't get paid unless and until we collect for someone. The second part of that is, and this is really important, is that if we do accept the case, not only are we working on a commission basis or a contingency, which means the clients don't pay us anything up front, we'll pay for those experts along the way to make sure the case is being preserved, is being prosecuted appropriately. So the clients don't have to come up with any of that money up front. We'll pay that as part of the case with the understanding that if we win the case and get a recovery for the family, we'll get reimbursed on the other end. But up front, they don't have to pay anything as long as the case is going on.
That's right. You and I talk about this all the time when we meet with families. And, our number one goal when we are contacted is we just want you to know what your rights are, to be on a level playing field with the other side. Whether you hire us or not hire us, it's important for you to know what your rights are so you can move forward appropriately.
That's right. And I've said this and I'll say it again. I view our role as two things, John. One is to be advocates for people to come to see us, meaning that we're going to make sure we fight for them and they retain us. But just as important, we're counselors and we're advisors. So we're going to tell people what our advice is. We're going to give them some thoughts, help guide them through the process so they can make a decision that is best for them and their family.
That's right, Tony. I want to talk about one final thing. Somebody just lost a loved one, and there's a human element to that. Obviously, that's good. They're going through one of the worst times in their life, and they're having to deal with a lawyer. And there has to be an element of compassion to that, because here we are. We're talking about the law. We're talking about the claims process. We're talking about evidence and those sorts of things. But this person just lost their husband, their son, a loved one. How do you handle the compassion in dealing with the family, knowing they're going through that, but you're also having to advise them as to what their rights are?
That's a great question, John, and it's really important that we do handle it with dignity and compassion along the way. At the end of the day, though, what they need is help. And when people come to us, they have a lot of people who are praying for them, reaching out to them, providing them comfort, and they're going to help them in spiritual ways and in personal ways to help them get through that process. And we as lawyers, we have a job to do, and it's try to help them out financially because that's the only thing that we can do. But we can try to get them answers along the way. But the primary thing is we have to stay focused and we have to stay driven and we have to make sure that we're doing what we can to help the family out financially because that's really what we're here to do.
That's right. Those are great thoughts, Tony. If you or a loved one have been hurt in a truck crash and you need experienced counsel, please call us at 317-269-2509 for a free case evaluation.